Senator Van Turnhout, you have 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. I have a lot to say, so I'll try to contain myself, Chair. Minister, you're extremely welcome to the House, and I do also welcome the fact that you've laid down for us a very comprehensive statement on youth policy, and I know that you'd hope to do it with us in December, and it is great that it's all together, and I'm delighted that you use this House to do this. Minister, in your intervention, you mentioned that we're very we're improving our data, but I do remain concerned about the lack of data, and I'm going to return to that in this area, especially concerning juvenile offenders and children coming into contact with the criminal justice system. Through an analysis of various reports compiled by the Association for Criminal Justice Research and Development and a number of significant academic studies by the likes of Seanad McPhilip, Ursula Kilkelly and Jennifer Hayes, 3 risk factors associated with children who became involved in criminal behaviour have been identified. And I know, Minister, you know it. Family background, educational disadvantage, which is characterised by poor literacy skills and low level of academic achievement, and thirdly, personal and familiar factors, such as alcohol, drug misuse, intergenerational mental health. But they've really categorised them for us. And unfortunately, Minister, that's not the understanding of the majority of the public, who are confronted daily with media reports about violent youth offenders and delinquent youths out of control type headlines. And I think it's understandable, in the absence of political and media discourse to the contrary, that they want a zero tolerance and a tough on crime type approach. And that's why I think it's very important, the type of intervention that you've made here today, Minister. And I very much support your understanding and also your move to promote prevention and early intervention. Minister, I want to commend the work of so many agencies involved in the delivery of juvenile justice policy in Ireland, such as An Garda Síochána, particularly the Garda Diversion Projects and the Garda Youth Diversion Projects. The dedicated Young Persons Probation Division of the Probation Service, the Court Service and the Prison Service, while they still have the 17-year-old children detained in St Patrick's Institution. I'd like, Minister, to make a special mention of the Irish Youth Justice Service, which has been leading and driving reform in the area of youth justice since its creation in 2005. I think it's made some really significant, important strides in this area, and it shows the importance of government departments working together, and I think that's very much, Minister, what you have outlined to us. But, Minister, I think there is a missed opportunity that a centralised data and research department has not been established in the Irish Youth Justice Service. I think we need to coordinate inter-agency research between the various agencies involved in the delivery of youth justice or juvenile justice. I think we need to map the trajectory of a child through the criminal justice system. Every child has an individual story. Unfortunately, we mostly get to read those stories in child death reports or other significant reports. I think we need to be collecting this data earlier. We also need to identify divergence between the policy and the legal framework of youth justice and its implementation, administration and practice. Minister, I'd like to personally congratulate you on a number of successes and advancements in youth justice policy that have come under your stewardship. In particular, I'd like to welcome your decision in relation to St Patrick's Institution and the update that you gave us here today in relation to bringing the detention centres together. And I think that's hugely significant. It's been long promised, Minister, but you did it, and I want to thank you for it. I am concerned, Minister, I agree we need a uniformed approach, a unified approach. I'm happy to hear that a new head of the campus has been appointed, and I certainly will look forward to the opportunity to support the legislation that you bring before us. I think there are significant challenges still to do with the campus, and I certainly would be supporting you. In the interim, since December 2013, Minister, 17-year-olds are being remanded to Wheatfield Prison, and I note specific concerns raised by the IPRT about 18 to 21-year-olds, and obviously any 17-year-olds also detained there, that Wheatfield is often overcrowded and does not have adequate education and training capacity for its inmates. And the focus for our young adult prison population must, Minister, be on rehabilitation and not containment. So I do remain concerned in that interim period how we are serving these young people. Minister, I would like to, while you're here before us in the House, also raise my concern again about the lack of sufficient special care and protection places available to children with severe emotional and behavioural difficulties, which we know, Minister, I raised when we dealt with the Child and Family Agency Bill in November. From a juvenile justice policy perspective, my concern echoes that articulated by Judge Anne Ryan, who recently presided over the Children Court in Smithfield. She has spoken of her frustration at the lack of HSE special care and protection places available to children, citing a correlation between the failure of the state to appropriately deal with these acutely vulnerable children and the likelihood that many will find themselves before the courts facing criminal charges. And Minister, as you know, I remain concerned. We've seen a HICWA report and then the response is to close the centre, and yet we know there are not enough places for these children who are extremely vulnerable. I would also like, Minister, to talk about children who are being remanded in custody. In 2008, which for me, the most recent data that I could find available from the Irish Youth Justice Service, figures show of the 111 children detained on remand in children detention schools in 2008, only 44% went on to be sentenced to detention on conviction. And Minister, that raises a twofold concern for me. One, that the detention as a last resort requirement, the underlying principle of the Children Act, was not being adequately embraced by judges at the pre-trial stage. And secondly, Minister, that there was an urgent need to introduce a formal system of bail support to help children manage their bail conditions, thus helping to reduce the number being placed in detention on remand. And unfortunately, Minister, the pilot scheme, which was mooted in 2008, Young People on Remand, the National Children's Research Strategy Series, to offer bail support services for vulnerable children who come before the Children's Court in Dublin and Limerick, failed to materialise due to insufficient reports. So, Minister, I'd like to ask you if you can provide us either today or in the next few days, some of the figures from the last few years. I'd be very much interested to see them and try and understand. I fear the situation, anecdotally from what I'm hearing, hasn't improved much, and in which case I'd ask maybe you can consider revisiting the bail support pilot scheme. Minister, I'd also like to raise the issue on training with you. Staff and personnel engaged in the formulation and delivery of youth justice policy should be trained in the provisions of the Children Act. There was a specific recommendation to that effect in the committee, by the Committee on the Rights of the Child in 2006. There is an advanced diploma, Minister, in juvenile justice currently being run by the King's Inn. I believe that the course is attended by a great mix of professionals and from a wide variety of disciplinary backgrounds: legal professionals, juvenile liaison officers, prison officers, detention staff indeed from the Irish Youth Justice Service. I think, Minister, we should be looking at examples like this to have robust specialised training should be rolled out on a systematic basis, and attendance should be supported by employers such as the state and the agencies. And in ending, I have tried to race through. In ending, I would like, Minister, to raise about the age of criminal responsibility. We saw that in the concluding observations of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child in 2006, they were concerned about the age being 10 for serious crimes under the Criminal Youth Justice Act 2006. I know, Minister, you've submitted your consolidated report. Minister, have you had any communication back from the committee? Is this something that Ireland will be considering before we go before the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child? And finally, Minister, I want to raise with you that at second stage of the Courts Bill last year with Minister Shatter, I alerted the Minister to my concern what I think have been routine breaches of the Children Act in the Dublin Children Court. Examples of these have been the court-appointed registrar, and I've checked these do continue, calling the name of the child into the public waiting room, so publicly calling a name, the former practice of district courts of including YP for young person beside a child's name on a court list, the presence of Gardaí and legal representatives unrelated to the specific case in the courtroom, which is mandated to sit in camera. The Minister said he would write to the court service. I'm waiting to hear back, but Minister, I'd like to raise it with you also, because I think we really need to also look at some practical remedies to ensure that the Children Act is implemented in the spirit as was intended by the Minister and by those here in these houses. Thank you very much, Chair, for your latitude.